You are on ABC Radio Queensland, and I wonder, how do you like to learn things? Kids do the look, cover, write, check method when learning words in school, but there are several different learning styles and we all tend to respond to them differently. Psychology expert Dr. Jo Lukens is with me now to get mind-wise about learning styles. Good morning.
Good morning, Susan.
This topic came up when I was having trouble pronouncing a name. If I do recall, Dr. Jo.
Yes, that was towards the end of last year. But in your defence, I didn't present the information to you
No.
in a way that maximised your learning style.
I take full responsibility. So what exactly are learning styles and how do they impact our ability to learn?
Yeah, so much like you said in the introduction, Susan, our learning styles is about our preference for learning. We can all learn in lots of different ways, but you'll probably find that most of us have a default go-to when we're trying to learn something new or take on a new task. So it's just recognising that we learn in different ways and some ways are much more effective and efficient for us in terms of our learning.
Can I ask what your learning style is?
I am written. I'm a written learner, so people who work with me have learnt that if they ask me to do something and they don't see me write it down, they need to ask me to do it, because otherwise, when it comes to hearing information, I'm Dory out of Finding Nemo. So there's generally 4 learning preferences that people tend to have. So we like to either write things down, we like to see things. Some people respond well from hearing and others it's from doing, or what sometimes gets called kinesthetic learning.
Yes, that's me. I like to do it, and when I was learning how to do everything here at the ABC, if I can get in and play, that's how I learn best. And then afterwards somebody else can come in and sort of teach me, and then it makes sense in my brain how it all works. It's very interesting,
Absolutely.
isn't it?
And if I can share with the listeners, as you explained that so beautifully then, your arms were moving a lot. So what tends to happen, and I do the same, is if I'm going to tell someone how to get somewhere, give directions, it's like I move my body and my hands and so forth, because otherwise I give terrible instructions.
Yes.
So movement can be about, can be expressed in lots of different ways, whether we're teaching or whether we're hearing.
So is it possible to have more than one learning style? And how do you find out what yours is?
Yes. So the answer is yes. So what we would call multimodal. So some people it might be about watch and learn, watch and listen, or it might be about hear and move, that sort of thing. So you might also find there's different types of activities where our learning preferences change. I would think that most people probably have a pretty good instinct as to what it is. Like if, let's say you'd never had a camera before and you were suddenly gifted a camera and you needed to work it. So I wonder, what would you do? Would you ask someone? Would you read the instructions? Would you YouTube it? Or would you just pick it up and start clicking and see how it goes? So most of us we learn through experience what tends to work for us. So we might do a combination, and many of us, there's certainly online assessments and things that you can do to kind of nail it down, and educators look at it obviously in a more sophisticated way, but most of us have a pretty good inkling for ourselves.
You tend to figure it out over time, I guess. So how can knowing your learning style improve how you learn?
Well, it's more efficient. So, if I've worked out that for me that hearing things isn't effective for me and I can write it down, even though it takes a little bit of time to write it down, it's better than telling it me 3 or 4 times. And so then I get less frustrated and I use less energy. And so it just makes the whole process so much easier. So the challenge for us in the world that we live in is, when we are in a learning environment, is placing ourselves in a situation where we're best receiving the information that works for us, but also when we're doing the teaching, making sure that we're delivering it in a way that makes sense for us and for the person who's listening.
Yeah, and if you're working in a team in a professional setting, you can knowing those learning styles from your teammates would make communication so much easier, right?
So much more effective. And that's what I've particularly seen in the elite athlete space. If you are a basketball coach and you've got a 30-second timeout, you've got 5 humans in front of you that you might be able to show it to them on the board, they might need to hear it. And for some people, if you present it to them in the way that doesn't work for them, you just confuse them.
Yes.
So I've actually spent time with teams where not only does the coach assess their own learning preference, but so do the athletes, and they share that information to maximise, because it's not a sign of your intelligence, it's just a recognition of different learning styles.
Just how your brain kind of works. So managers would be able to use the information to improve outcomes and even I guess, how people connect and relate in the workplace.
Oh, absolutely. And it's just understanding that people do learn in those different ways. And so it might be that if you're in a boardroom that you've got a whiteboard there with pens and you make it okay for people to get up and draw things and talk about things. It's making sure that, if you're like me, always carry a notebook with you so you can write things down and remember. So it's recognising in workplaces we've got such a diversity in learning of employees that it's a shame not to maximise that information when it's available to us.
What about with kids?
Yeah, well, kids is interesting, isn't it? Because, knowing a lot of educators, they are very creative in how they get children to learn and you see the styles. And what I think happens when you get to that high school level is it does tend to benefit those students who can sit at a desk and listen. And I know teachers are very creative in the modalities of how they learn, but looking at my children as two different learners, one in particular learns from movement. Now, that's tricky in some classrooms. And I remember he did business at one stage and the teacher did lots of getting up and moving around and having like little think tanks and so forth. And he flourished in that environment because he was moving. Yeah. So we know that for our children as well. So it's always interesting for parents to keep a little eye out. And I would, at parent-teacher interviews, maybe have those conversations with your teacher, particularly if you've noticed something, it's good information to share with the teachers and then they can give you some insights as well.
Yes. You say that about your child. My son, Joseph, he's 7, so he likes to be active all of the time. But when he does not like reading at the moment, but if I get him to do exercise between each page, like he'll do sit-ups or something in between each page, and then he loves it.
Yeah, and he will probably will retain it better. My son, when he was younger, was the same. It used to drive me insane because we had a timber floor, but he found it best if I quizzed him for an exam if he was dribbling a basketball at the same time.
That would be annoying. Yeah.
It was very annoying. But anyway, it helped him with his science.
And can parents enhance this information to be able to get their families to listen to them?
Ooh, that's going to be a stretch, isn't it?
Well,
so, maybe
tries. Can't have miracles here, Dr. Jo. Just checking.
We might need to look for some other magic for that.
Yes, yeah, that's true. So, but parents would be able to use this for things like homework and such as well.
Definitely, yeah. and we've tried to use different creative things in our household to help enhance the learning. And that's worked quite well for us. We've learned through trial and error what does work and what doesn't.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Jo. Oh, that was really interesting. I think we need to all do quizzes now so that we can get it out on the table. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.